So I decided to just go back to the basics on this ender. I pulled the Sonic pad, and I'm just using the Creality slicer. So we have a direct drive with the factory extruder, and we have dual Z screw. We have the what I believe is probably the factory bed sheet. It's got some damage to it from the previous owner, but it's still usable. So we're using up some of this really old PLA and printing these little dice. And my settings weren't quite right at first, but I think I've got it better now. So basically, I just go back to factory Marlin firmware, no Sonic pad, no nothing. You got to get it working good to where the point where, like, if I wanted to give this to somebody, it's going to print for them. It's going to print, average prints that, they'd be like, wow. And maybe would be good enough for somebody that was interested in 3D printing without causing too much frustration. So the goal is to get this one printing with factory Marlin completely, good. And if that still won't work, we will remove every single modification off of this thing and just get it to where it does work. Because when you buy one of these, I haven't bought one new. These were given to me, used, not working. But I'm pretty sure when you buy them new, specifically this one, because it does the bed leveling pretty much automatically for you and sets a lot of the parameters. They're just going to print. You might have a bunch of print fails based on, if you set the temperature wrong, if you've monkeyed around with the slicer speed, I mean, if you're going to use the Creality software, it's not going to recommend you to print faster than 50 millimeters. Some of the default settings for certain filament is kind of strange. So this one here, I don't remember what it wanted to do. It has really low settings for PETG for some reason. So it's got quite a bit of squish to it. And I think this is a polycarbonate sheet. So what I'll do is once I get this to where it's working good, then I'll go ahead and pull out the PEI bed sheet and redo everything so that I'm not risking damaging everything. And then a problem with the springs in the bottom of this, because with the Sonic pad they tell you to tighten all your springs down as tight as possible. And, well, what happens is this back corner here, you have that spacer for the wire holder. So it's always going to be up higher. And so I'm doing a calibration at a manual level, and I can't get that corner low enough to not, have issues. Because it's basically reading the Z offset, and it's like setting it a certain way. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like what I ended up doing was I loosened all of the wheels completely and then turned them back till they just started to get snug for a second. Not even really snug, just till they're like, going to start tightening. And then I did a probe offset or whatever, in on the Sonic pad. It just basically probes the bed and says, okay, Z offset is probably this much. And then it seems to adjust the Z axis based on that. So then you go in and do a manual probe and try and level the four corners, and it'll put it at a certain height. The problem is there's no Z stop on this particular printer. And the physical stopping point of this is buried into the bed. So, I don't know if there's actually something that stops it from going at all. So, the printer needs to know where the bed is at. And if you've got one corner up high and it's tilted this way and it's measuring the bed over here, it's like, oh, okay, the bed's over here. But then you're going to hit that corner. So you kind of have to be close to start with, because it doesn't have like a home position for the Z as far as I can tell. I mean, it will go all the way until it hits, right here, if the bed wasn't there. So, with this one here, like I said, I'm just going back to completely, start from scratch. So right now, I'm printing another one of these dice, and I have my settings. If you look and see, I don't know if it'll see where it started to look better. That was at 220. I started at 195 and I bumped it up 200, 205, 210. But it wasn't until I went to about 220 that it started to print a little nicer. So we're starting this one at that point. I think this one's basically ready to go as far as all that goes. And I haven't really done anything. I flashed the Marlin to it. I did a bed level, like a automatic bed level, and then it doesn't have the option to really do a manual bed level on this one, but I mean you can. So I just basically just started printing just like that. So I think that's kind of my point, is if I had got this out of the box, set it up, put it together, did a bed level, it would just print. And I would get something that would look like this. And, it'd take 26 minutes to print it, but who cares? It printed it. So, I haven't played with the factory stuff too much. You can go into the tune while it's printing. You can change your speed, you can change your nozzle temperature, change the fan speed, and you can screw around with the Z offset. But all that seemed to be pretty much correct to start with without me having to mess with it. So that's definitely kind of cool. The issue with these printers for me is that I got 3 of them and they were all different, they're all modified, and they were all already broken. So I kind of had to pick up the pieces and figure out what was wrong with it. This one had a bad motherboard, and then I swapped in a newer motherboard that was already purchased for the printer, but 4.2.7 in this particular printer has no firmware available. You can't put the older firmware on the newer board. So there's a profile for the 3V2, but not for the 3V2 Neo. And they're not the same. The print head is different on them. The physical characteristics are the same for the bed, but where the print nozzle is it's in a different spot. And I know this for a fact because I've done a direct drive conversion on 2 of these, and the bracket doesn't fit from one to the other because of where the nozzle is located. And so if you set this up for a 3V2 and then you home it, your nozzle will be somewhere in a different spot than it would be on the other one. So it's close, and you could get away with it in some instances, but it's not the same. That's why when you install the professional firmware on this particular printer, you're going to run into problems. It's not set up the same, and you need to adjust certain things. And that's why I'm not running it. I like the professional firmware, but I'm running the factory thing, and I was able to repair the old 4.2.2 board and get it working. So we're able to go back to Marlin. So let's see if we can get a glimpse at how we're printing here. I can't really see in there very well, but it looks okay. Of course it want to focus. Anyway, it looks like it's going to look better than the other one. So I'm going to do this with the other two printers and then move on to other stuff. But basically with this one here, you'd be able to print TPU and whatever you wanted, and you know, it would probably be a good first printer for somebody, you know. But I mean, it's not going to like rival a new Elegoo Neptune, you know, or even SV07 or any of those. And cost-wise, these are not worth buying. They really aren't. And I guess, you know, I mean, we've all discussed that. I mean, like, it depends on how much you pay for it, but you know, if you can get one used for $50, then they are worth buying. But you know, I don't feel like these printers are worth more than $50. And the issue or anything, I think, is really, like people said, it's the heart of the printer, the board, the processor, the speeds that it can run, what it's able to do. I don't really think the physical limitations are the mechanical hardware so much as it is that, like, the board is only capable of, like, you know, doing certain things, you know. And you can run Clipper on it and it'll run a little bit better, but you still have to have that board in there doing its thing. So, you know, I don't know. I just started doing this like less than 3 months ago. So, and a lot of people will watch my videos and they'll make comments and they really don't know anything about who I am or, you know, where I'm at on my 3D printing adventure, and they like think, oh, well, you paid for this printer and you're stupid and you can't figure it out. And, you know, it's like, no, that's not what happened. I got a box of stuff plus 3 printers plus another box of stuff from a friend who's been 3D printing since like the beginning of like stuff. Like, he was using the old ANET A8 printers and stuff like that, and so he gave me all this stuff because all 3 printers were broken, and he was like, I'm done, I don't need them anymore, and if I need something 3D printed, I just have my son print it. So anyway, I started printing on a Pyramid printer, which is basically a copy of a CR10. And I mean, it's probably light years ahead of any of the Enders because it's got everything that you would upgrade already, except for the touch sensor. And honestly, you don't need a touch sensor. You just have to, if you can level your bed mechanically, I mean, like, why would you need a touch sensor? So, other than to run a bend mesh and, you know, get into faster printing. But I started on that, and I bought an Ender 3 V3 SE, and it was bent really bad on the bottom down here. And eventually I printed some spacers because you can't adjust it. And it was so far off that I was having trouble with the mesh wasn't calibrating for the bed being all screwed up. And then it gouged up the print sheet and all that. And I finally got it figured out. So I had that printing for a while and working. So anyways, I was just interrupted for a second there. So I started on that CR10 clone, basically, and, you know, I had a glass bed with painter's tape on it, and, you know, I got it to work pretty good, printed some stuff I wanted to print, and, you know, everything was hours and hours and hours, you know, real slow, 50 millimeters, you know, and I wanted to print big stuff, and so, we're trying to use up all this filament. So I bought the 3V3 SE, okay, and the bed was bent, and there was a little bit of a learning curve for me. I think I'd been printing for like 2 weeks when I bought that, maybe 3, and when I finally got that printer printing good, I noticed that all my prints didn't, they were out of scale. The circles weren't circles or something. I'm not really sure. But when you'd print something like a screw and a bolt, they wouldn't fit each other, but you'd print them on the other printer and they would. So ultimately, upon my friend's advice, I ended up returning that, which was quite a hassle with Amazon, and it took a while to get my money back. But I ordered, in between that time, I ordered, well, actually prior to that, I ordered an Elegoo, or not an Elegoo, a Sunlu S9 Plus. And I had really good luck with that printer right out the gate. It worked really well. It was kind of a weird printer. I still have it, and I've been modifying it. But it was kind of a weird printer, but it didn't print fast, but it was pretty good quality, you know, for a Bowden tube and all that. So, and then I converted it to direct drive and didn't really see much improvement, but it was still a really good printer with, you know, the size of a CR10. So I had that for a while, and then I returned the other printer, the V3 SE, which, by the way, printed really, really fast and printed quality looking prints, but they were not the right shape. So there was definitely something wrong with my printer, and I just really wasn't interested in trying to troubleshoot it. And, you know, I sent lots of emails and stuff back and forth. It's just, I wasted a lot of time. Anyway, I ordered the Elegoo Neptune 4 Pro. I should have bought it on eBay because it was much cheaper. But anyway, so I paid about $315 for that. And it's been an amazing printer. Really, really good. And if I had started out on that, I probably would have never learned anything, because it really does a lot of the stuff for you. And it prints fast, and it's really, really user-friendly. And I now have that printer as like my main go-to inside an enclosure. So after I bought that, I bought a used SVO 6 Plus, and it didn't work when I got it because the guy left it set up for the Sonic Pad, which I got from Dave after the fact. But this guy sold me this printer for $180. He offered me a really good deal on it with the Sonic Pad, but I didn't really know whether or not I wanted that. And so I ended up not buying the Sonic Pad with it. But I got it home, and they turned it on, and all I got was a blank Solvo screen. And I contacted him, and he told me, yeah, there's no firmware on it. And so I said, okay. So I downloaded the firmware and flashed it. So I was very nervous because I'd never even flashed firmware to anything else other than the Pyramid printer, which already was working. So I got it working. I was having the Z offset issues until I actually marked my Z and did all that. But so I noticed it wasn't real fast, but it, you know, I mean, it was an okay printer. So after that, I ordered the SVO7, and I've had quite a few problems with the SVO7 because I think the slicer for it isn't really that good that they provide. But they give you the files on the disk. They're very optimized. They're very, very good from the test prints. So you'll get these like amazing 25, 27 minute benchies that just, you're like, wow. But they don't work well when you use their included, you know, old Cura skinned slicer. And then you're like, well, what the hell is going on here? I can print these really nice benchies. And also, I was having serious problems using PETG. So, with that one, I actually switched to PLA for a while, and it did good. It was a lot better. And then I found a SVO7 profile from that Gergo print guy. And I downloaded that and installed it into the Cura, and that made a huge difference. And so it actually made the printer to where it was like usable for PLA and PETG. but I still had to turn down my acceleration from like 8,000 to like 4,000. So it was like the printer was just trying to print way too fast. But I've got that one to where it's okay, but I prefer not to use it. And I haven't spent enough time with it to get it to where it works how I want. So normally, if I'm going to print, my first printer that I go to is the Elegoo Neptune 4 Pro. And then after that, it would be this one, and then the Sunlu, and then any of the other ones.